It is now 8 o'clock. I will call the meeting of Tuesday, October 12th to order. Good morning.
Can they hear us out there?
Yeah, can you guys hear us? And Chief Bush, can you give me a verbal yes? You can hear us on VTC land?
Very loud and clear.
Thank you, sir. And everybody else, if you could mute your microphones, that would be outstanding. Thank you. Okay, very first item today is approve the minutes for the last meeting from September 14th. That's not the last meeting, was it? Was? Yeah, I guess it was. Approve the meetings from September 14th as published. Is there any discussion on them or any corrections to the minutes?
Second.
All right, got a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Hagan?
Aye.
Cosgrove?
Aye.
Capitan? Jim, are you on? Lynn?
Aye.
Lind?
Aye. They stand approved as published. Approve the vouchers totaling $59,236.41. That was from the 2 pages of stuff that we got, 3 pages of stuff that we have here.
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Hagan?
Aye.
Cosgrove?
Aye.
Lind?
Aye.
Lind?
Aye. Approve the individual vouchers, Alpha through Golf, which is Meat and Hunt, Flash Parking, Northern Improvement, Parsons Electric, 6L LLC, Flint Communications, and TL Stroh Architects. Any discussion on these items? Any questions?
Move to approve A through G on item 3.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call vote.
Hagan?
Aye.
Cosgrove?
Aye.
Lind?
Aye.
Lind?
Aye. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, when are we gonna have a presentation by Flint for just kind of like an update? I think it would be kind of,
Yeah, they'll do their 2022 presentation probably in the November, December timeframe.
okay, perfect, that's what I was thinking. Thank you.
Okay. Item 4, receive the bids and recommendation of award from Obernell HVAC pathogen mitigation project for their West Side Terminal.
All right. I see Steve is on from Obernell. Steve, they've received your letter and your recommendation of award for the Terminal Airborne Pathogen Mitigation Project. So Steve, go from there.
Sure. Yeah, and I apologize for some of the background noise. I'm at home with a quarantine toddler, so I'm. Yeah, we got bids back here 2 weeks ago from today, actually. Had a bid from Peterson Mechanical, a bid from Superior Electric, and we actually did not receive any general construction bids. My recommendation for that, and what I included in my letter, is that we award the project to Peterson Mechanical for the mechanical and Superior Electric for the electrical portion of the work. And that the general portion is very limited. So my recommendation is that we award the project, for mechanical electrical, and then kind of do a first proposal request to incorporate the general construction work into the mechanical contract. It's a limited scope of work. It's limited to roofing and a little bit of drywall, patching, and cutting.
And the mechanical contractor would be able to handle that? Is that in their scope of expertise?
Yeah, so, before I sent my letter, I had a conversation with Steve Fredette with Peterson Mechanical, just to confirm that he was okay with that, and he had no issues. He'd be more than happy to do the project that way.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I assume this is just remove, replace, and then patch and repair where they've removed and replaced equipment for the most part.
Sir, can you did you hear him? He said we assume this is just...
I did hear him, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so the scope is there's a little bit of roofing where we remove the one old energy recovery unit and then put a new one in, so there's kind of some patching and cut in there. And then there's the ceiling in the water heater room in the kitchen. That's a sheetrock ceiling. Now we have some cutting and patching in there. And then the remaining work is a little bit of remaining work is we have to get into a chase by the airline counters there, so we have a little bit of drywall cutting and patching there. And then I guess there's, limited painting, with some of the ductwork as well.
Okay, my question was, what were the, on your bid tabulation sheet here, you have the mechanical base bid for $313,000, you have the electrical for $5,700, then you have the alternates 1 and 2. What were those about? Can you explain that for me, please?
Yeah, sure. Yep, so alternate number 1 was for adding some HEPA fan filter units above, just right outside of the security checkout, kind of right where you come up the escalator and the stair there. There's actually no air movement in there, so these HEPA fan filter units would provide some air changeover and kind of filter out any airborne pathogens in that space. So that was alternate number 1, and then alternate number 2 was for installing bipolar ionization in all the heat pumps. So that's all the throughout the kind of the terminal side and everything except the tugger concourse essentially. So, and what bipolar ionization does is it helps inactivate any virus and bacteria that's airborne.
Okay, thank you.
And just to remind you, this project is eligible for either our CARISA grant or our ARPA grant that is still in process. So there is grant funds available for 100% of the cost.
Okay, do we have to vote separately to include the alternates?
No, you can make one motion to award the base bid with both alternates if you so desire.
Okay. Did everybody hear that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we have, what are we doing here? We're just receiving bids, right?
And awarding.
And awarding,
Mhm.
okay, all right.
I moved the bid approval with the alternates.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it. And this was the alternates were based on the conversation about that lack of air movement,
Mhm.
temperature when the original inspection was done. Is that correct? Correct. Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
it's just outside the door between the restaurant and gift shop, right before the checkpoint where a lot of people congregate.
Kind of great, yep.
Okay. Any other further discussion? Any questions that anybody needs answered?
I have a comment. It's sad that we didn't get more bids.
Yeah.
But I think time is of the essence in getting some of this work done.
Okay, roger that. Roll call vote?
Hagan.
Aye.
Cosgrove.
Aye.
Lynn.
Aye.
Lynn.
Aye.
Just check. Jim Capitan, are you still on? No? All right. We'll move on.
Okay, there you go, Mr. Steve, you have your contract. Okay, number 5, received second amendment to the cargo airline operations agreements through December of 2021 and the 5-year extensions effective January 22.
Yeah, so both UPS and FedEx have the same operating agreements. Obviously, FedEx was here prior to UPS, so their agreement ran out a little bit earlier. We tracked UPS with the same time frame when they started their operations as well. Now those agreements are in line for an extension. Let's see, UPS has signed one, the one that's through December 31st of 2021. Legal's still looking at the January 1st and the 5 years from there. I spoke with the FedEx rep late last week, and it's going to be a 30 to 60-day turnaround for them to get the agreements back, even though there is no substantial change. There basically is no change, other than we did change the language in the landing fee, which allows us to change the landing fee on January 1st of each year of the agreement, which is standard for our passenger carrier leases as well.
Okay. Any discussion? Any questions? Can I get a motion?
Move to accept the revised lease as written.
We want them around, right?
Yep.
And a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. Roll call vote.
Hingham.
Aye.
Cosgrove.
Aye.
Lynn.
Aye.
Lynn.
Aye. And there we go, and we'll sign away on those. Get those at the end, right? Okay, item 6, receive the update regarding the RFP for advertising and session from Clear Communications.
This was sent out to you, I guess, for review and comment some time ago per our conversations at a previous meeting. The ad did run in the form this past Wednesday. It'll run for the next 2 weeks. We've also placed it on the national advertising portal through the American Association of Airport Executives. I've already had an inquiry from a company from New Zealand. And I would expect that Clear Channel will as well. As far as locals, hopefully they're reading the form. I don't know if there's anyone locally that can do it, but hopefully they're paying attention to the form or looking at our website for information from there. So I guess if you know anyone, you can let them know. It's the ones that you don't call that are the problem, not the ones that you do. So we trust that they'll look at the legal sections in the form if there is anyone in the Fargo-Moorhead area that's eligible to do this, or anywhere in the area for that matter. So what's before you is the RFP that went out, and then there's a lengthy information for proposers detail that's on our website. That's where they'd have to go to get the information. So I don't know if you have any questions.
And when does this close?
Bids are due on December 1st, so it would be our hope that we would award this in December. There's a pre-proposal meeting that'll be here on October 20th. We had it mandatory that they show up, but then after further thought, there is in lieu of meeting in person, there's a virtual pre-proposal meeting option that we could send out through Zoom if so
That'd be
be it.
good.
So, but
Yeah, I'd love to get as much local participation as we
Yeah.
can find on that too. So
yeah, I just don't know that there's anyone local that can do it, but we'll see.
we'll see. Okay, so any we don't
Just
have
to receive and
vote.
file.
We just
Yep.
receive and file copy. All right, and receive communication from Cass County Electric regarding the revised easement.
Okay, so back in August, Cass County Electric had requested an easement along 52nd Avenue North in the County 31 area to run parallel with the new flood levee that was put in. You did approve that request at that meeting. They hadn't finished the work, and then on September 27th, Brent from Cass County Electric advised Stacy and I that they want to change the route of the easement slightly, which I don't know, I've got a picture, I guess, of the previous one. Basically, they've just straightened it out to go east and west versus a little north-south stub that they had in the previous one that you had approved, which is not an issue for me. See if I can find a copy of that for you to look at.
Do you think this will be the last change?
I hope so. So what you had previously approved, this is 52nd Avenue North, is the red line there. Okay, that's what you had previously approved. And then their request is to straighten out that section from County 31. There it is right there. So basically they just are going straight across. So that's the only change. So nothing substantial. So I would request your approval of that change, and Stacy will work with Brent. They did provide the draft. We will get the proper name of the Municipal Airport Authority of the City of Fargo on all of the easements.
I just thought I'd wait on doing that until we
Till the
had
very end?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they will provide the legal description once it's in the ground.
Move.
Any discussion? Okay, Tammy, I'll take your motion,
Okay.
Second.
and I'll take a second. Thank you. Roll call vote.
Hingham.
Aye.
Cosgrove.
Aye.
Lynn.
Aye.
Lind.
Aye. Item 8, authorize attendance to the Great Lakes Chapter Airport Conference, October 24th through 26th in Chicago.
Okay, so Jordan and I will be attending in person. Our airfield staff will attend virtually. I'm involved with some of the workshop that's held on, I think, the 24th of that conference. And it's a really good conference. There's 3 different sections for engineers, for airfield operators, and the FAA is involved with this conference. The Great Lakes Chapter has partnered with them for the last few years to put this on, and they usually get 250 to 350 people attending. Now with the virtual component, it could approach 400. So your authorization would be appreciated.
Okay, any discussion? Anything you'd like Sean to discuss there?
I think I sent out the agenda, didn't I? with
You
that?
did.
It's here too. I think it'll be really interesting. I think, just the conversation because of what's happened over the last couple of years, and because you've attended this before, to be able to see the conversations and how people are dealing with this whole transition back to what it could be.
Mhm.
Okay.
I'm so moved.
Second, and roll call vote.
Hagan.
Aye.
Bosworth.
Aye.
Lind.
Aye.
Lind.
Aye. Go do good work there. All right, item 9, receive communication from Meadowlark Logistics regarding the East Side Terminal Office Space lease and extension.
You have a letter of intent. We did go ahead and make the change. So Meadowlark has leased space on the first floor of the East Terminal for a number of years, and then last year they leased space on the second floor. Those leases expired the existing first floor space. Well, when UPS had moved into the first floor space, Dave from Meadowlark had requested first option to move into that space because he's an eligible aeronautical tenant, and he did that on October 1st. So what we will do is the lease will be for on the first floor space that he moved in for UPS. There's an October, November, December amount, and then on January 1st the amount changes. It goes up by 3% for the first floor space. His second floor space expires on December 31st. That will be extended for 1 year as well with the 3% escalator. So Stacy has those agreements in process. And,
Yeah, and so I would say on the first floor, since they did move from the ICS space into what on this exhibit shows vacant but UPS, I think we draft a whole new lease agreement.
Yes.
Since the space, okay.
Mhm.
Yep, I'll have those ready to you today.
What type of work does Meadowlark do?
They fly, well, they took a bunch of our stuff yesterday's stormwater samples out to Bismarck, but they fly canceled checks, they fly any kind of freight and stuff. They've done that for a number of years. Used to be called ICS, then they changed to Meadowlark Logistics. Dave Lawson is the owner. And he was happy to get that UPS space.
Good.
Okay. Any discussion? Any questions? Can I get a motion?
I actually have a comment.
Yeah.
Darren, how did UPS leave the space?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, we walked through it. I mean, they left a few things, but nothing that Dave Lawson was concerned about. So before they left, Dave walked through there and he didn't have any concerns. And then we got the floors cleaned nice and warm. And
Good.
yeah, looked pretty good compared to what it was.
Very good. Motion, please.
Motion to accept extension and expiration of new lease.
Second.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Hagan.
Aye.
Cosgrove.
Aye.
Lind.
Aye.
Lind.
Aye. Number 10, discuss the airport ground rental rates for the South GA, North GA, and commercial area.
Okay, I was hoping Rick Flaxbarth would be here, but he, I think, went to a training session this morning. So from time to time, we'll engage a commercial realtor or we chat with the city assessor's office on our current ground rates. So the South GA rate has been 8 cents for, probably back into the late 90s. Our North GA was set back in the 90s as well at 10 cents per square foot per annum. And our commercial rate, which is Cass County Sheriff's Office, UPS, FedEx, Corporate Air, Bemidji Aviation up in the cargo area, has been at 25 cents since 2015. So what we've periodically done over the years is looked at engaging a commercial realtor. Rick was going to get together with 2 other commercial realtors and discuss that. The general aviation rates are, we know that they're low, but I think the board's ideas in the past have been is that keep the rates low and competitive because look at the development that we've had. Our only comparables for general aviation are probably West Fargo, Moorhead, Holly, Detroit Lakes, and maybe Castleton, because pilots in this general area can drive from Fargo, Moorhead, West Fargo to those airports. So the 8 and 10 cents, if you look at raising that a couple of cents per square foot now and try and get on track. I don't know what the rates are at the other airports. And we'll certainly, I think Rick maybe was going to reach out to some of those to find out what those rates have been, but it's probably time to look at the GA rates and probably increase those slightly here, maybe starting January 1st. So when the next invoice goes out in 2022, there could be possibly a rate increase on there. On the commercial side, one of the board members back in '95, and it was Tracy Myers, had put together 3 commercial realtors, and they came up with starting the commercial rate at 16 cents a square foot and then raising it 3 cents a square foot every 5 years. So we went from 16, 19, 22, 25. When FedEx had started the process, there wasn't any consensus to raise the rate from there. Same process we looked at with UPS at that time. The first opportunity that we'll have to raise the commercial rate would be in 2022 when the corporate air lease, which is paid by FedEx, comes up. The earliest that we can raise the FedEx lease is in late 2024 per how their lease agreements work, and the same would be with UPS. There's a standard clause in both of the commercial leases for UPS and FedEx that doesn't allow the rate to go up by more than 20% from the previous year. So on year 8 in the FedEx lease, it can't go up by more than 20% from what it was in year 7. The same language is in the UPS lease. And then there's another provision in the lease that talks about that rate is based on CPI. So whatever the consumer price index is, Rick has reviewed that information. I'm sorry he wasn't able to be with us here today, but that is in process. And like I said, we do this periodically. Finding commercial comparables around the airport, Rick had reported last week, is very difficult because there's really nothing to compare to. There's rates outside the airport on leased property that are up to like 90 cents a square foot. If you look at the lease rates over where McDonald's and that is over by the Dome and stuff, they're even more. In fact, I have a copy of that lease. But here on the airport, the lease rates tend to be depressed because of the fact that, one, you're leasing ground. There's a reversionary clause in all of our leases that says if you get a 20-year ground lease, at the end of your lease, the building is ours, which the FAA requires. We haven't taken possession of any of those buildings. We've done 5 or 10-year extensions of those ground leases. And then also you look at, the access to the facilities and so forth. So I think we've been competitive. The ground lease rates probably can be tweaked up slightly for the general aviation group, but there's a tolerance there. Look at development if it's either West Fargo or Moorhead or Castleton or Holly or Detroit, like some of these other airports, or look at the commercial airports, around North Dakota or even that are close to us in Minnesota. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but like I say, we do this from time to time. I used to always engage like Ben Hushka or Marv Eaton when they were down in the assessor's office. They'd look at the rates and say, you're really good, but finding the comparables is what's difficult. Some airports will call on the commercial side, if it's Bismarck or Rapid City or Sioux Falls or Minneapolis, and the FAA will come back and say, well, we don't care what they're charging. What's the market in your community? So, they're charging whatever rate that they need to make, pay their bills and do their things, and it's unique. So it's a little difficult for us. There's lots of leases around town, but it's just not comparable to an airport. And then, especially when the board can take the building at the end of the lease term, that's negative towards development.
It's smart to look at that, to make an assessment like that.
But I don't know if you have any questions, comments, John?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I do lease land by the airport with restricted covenants. It is a difficult thing to set those rates, but what we do with each lease is look for comparables and start with that as your base cost. So if you look and you see, and you can ask some realtors to provide the information, but you see, $5 a square foot is the going price for somewhat comparable. You're never going to get exact. We simply apply a capitalization rate to that. That's something you can fight over for a long time, but just for ease of math, you got a $5 square foot purchase price, a 10% capitalization rate, you're going to be charging 50 cents a square foot. That's your baseline, and then you adjust off it. So if you are providing incentives, you have a baseline. You don't just go, oh, we're going to do this at 25 cents a square foot. You can kind of see where your cost is. All you're doing there is valuing your asset and getting a return on that asset. So, if you're going to have a study done like that, I think it's good and it's appropriate. And it should be a discussion with each lease that there may be reasons to provide incentives, but where are you starting at?
Mm-hmm.
And Rick did a bunch of that research. Maybe at our next meeting I'll have him present that. They looked at comparables like what Commissioner Cosgrove said. Just to give you an idea, on August 17th, Bismarck, they calculated their CIP, well, I think it should be CPI, Consumer Price Index, 5.4%. So that's what their rates were going to go up in Bismarck. But they don't have any development either. So it's kind of chicken and egg. We keep it affordable. The revenues that we receive from the private hangar owners and the commercial aren't really our primary revenue sources, but yet at the same time, we want to try and obtain fair market value. That's one of the requirements that we need, and the comparables, it is. And I don't know the process that the realtors went through. I think Mark Johnson was one of them. Richmond from Colbert. I can't remember the three that Tracy had put together, and they came up with this. So I assume that they did the same type of analysis back in 1995. That kind of set us on the track to where we are today. So we'll get more at our next meeting if Rick is available, and if you have any other input or ideas, we'd certainly appreciate it. I know Commissioner Cosgrove has a lot of background in this, so we appreciate it.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay. We'll postpone the discussion for when we have Flax Park here. Good background though. Okay, item 11 is discuss moving the second October meeting to Wednesday, October 27th.
Okay, because of the conference in Chicago, I'm hoping that you'll be available on Wednesday instead of Tuesday that week. Otherwise, we wouldn't meet until November, or we could find a different date. So 8 a.m. on Wednesday, October 27th, if that works for you, that would be appreciated. We can keep it a short meeting, I guess, if we need to. But
I have no conflicts out of the ordinary. Tammy?
Not sure.
It's a great
But,
answer.
I mean, I'll figure it out. If I'm teaching, if I can't get away, I'll just Zoom it in.
Okay. Rick, you know? Yeah.
Fine.
You're good? Okay. Mr. Cosgrove, you were checking your schedule there. Are you available that day?
Unknown.
Unknown. Okay. And then how about we all follow up with email if there's any conflict, and then we'll talk to Mr. Capitan too.
Okay.
So for right now,
Tentative
agreement. Number 12, everybody's favorite, airport construction security update. What do you got for us, gentlemen?
Well, so let's go first.
That's why I show up.
So there's two things that we'll cover today. The exit Plaza possible relocation, and Terry is going to talk about covered parking. So whoever wants to go first, flip a coin, or
It's juicy.
nothing anymore. I can just give you a little update. We met yesterday with Eric Johnson from Meineke Johnson on the concrete issue over at the SRE building. They are going to try and find a different contractor to finish the work and have that done by the 1st of the month. So they know that after 3 times it would be wise to get a different contractor, and I think you'll follow through on that. Most of the punch list items have been taken care of, and the FAA did finally respond on change orders. They got information back to both Jeff and Terry for further explanations on some of the change order issues. Hopefully we'll have that resolved by the next meeting as well. Cargo apron, we're
Just
pretty well
working
done.
through final payments.
Final payments,
All
so-
the punch list items are done.
And the grass is, I think, nicer than Augusta, right? Is that what you said?
It is.
After being
I
worried that
don't
we weren't gonna
understand
get
we had a
grass.
drought all summer, still in a drought.
I know,
The grass.
the grass is great.
All right, so covered parking, I guess we can do that unless you got anything else.
Yeah, so we put together a little, so we don't have any like pretty pictures necessarily, but wanted to give you an idea. I think really it had a lot to do with you know, what kind of options we have and what would they cost. So next slide here. Ready.
Let's see. Oops. Yeah, I gotta move this down.
Can everybody online see that? Are you sharing the screen? Chief Bush, can you see that? Or Brad McAllister? I know Brad is on from.
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Okay, so the idea was the west short-term parking lot would be looked at for a covered parking spot. And so we looked at a couple of different ways to do it. Next slide. One way was to basically build a building, 1-story structure, pre-engineered metal building. We would use concrete walls that would come out of the ground about 3 feet, so we wouldn't have rusting and stuff like that going on with that kind of a structure. And we'd be looking at right now covering it with panels very similar to the SRE building. So they'd be insulated panels in a non-insulated building only from the standpoint of we would use them. They'd be structural from the standpoint they could span a longer distance, and so we'd have less framing to make it work. Right now there's 116 stalls there. That's debatable depending on how you count them. And we would lose maybe 10 stalls by just the virtue of the building. And so we end up with 106 stalls. Next. And so this is kind of what it looks like. So on the left side would be the west side coming in when you make that turnaround in front of the terminal. It would be a two-way parking situation. There'd be 2 doors on the east side, and they would be able to, you would end up doing the similar things that they do today with reserved parking, and you'd reserve a spot in there. They check it. So if you were parking in there and you didn't have one, you could get towed. So it slopes. So the section on the bottom is showing how the roof would just slope one way to try to make it as inconspicuous and not look like a shed. So the left side would be against the terminal, and the right side would be up against that berm between short term and long term. And so because it's covering, basically it's a large garage with no garage doors. So there wouldn't be any garage doors. It'd be one and then 2 on the east side, 1 on the west. So minimal snow could blow in it, and so anyway, so trying to get the snow off the cars, we have to use a standpipe system, so we don't have to sprinkle it. In other words, you see in this facility where you see building sprinklers, but because they're vehicles with gas in them, we had to do standpipes, which is if you've been in any old buildings and you've been in a stairwell and you see this big cabinet with a big hose reeled up, that's a standpipe basically. So it's basically a connection that the fire department can hook on hose that's either there or one they provide to fight the fire. So we wouldn't have to do an actual sprinkler system, which would be quite a bit more money. So that's a good thing. We obviously don't have to light it. So then we got to, I went to Olaf Anderson because they do so many large metal buildings. We have a pretty good relationship with those guys, and so they've done estimates for us before. So they gave us an estimate for the building. Here's just a kind of a blocky 3-dimensional look of where it would be. Again, it would be probably blue. We could conceivably add windows to it. Would just make it a little more expensive, probably on the north side. If you did windows, maybe add 50-60 grand to it. But we would anticipate using some semi-opaque panels in the ceiling, so during the day you might not have to light it. So next slide. So this is both the estimates that we got from Olaf on the project. So it's a little over $3.5 million. I think part of that has to do with the cost of metal buildings today. They're very expensive. We were talking about doing one and using precast concrete, which would go a lot faster. It would be a little bit more money, but not a lot. But it'd be more. So the precast option is kind of cool from the standpoint of it just goes up so fast, So big pieces, all done, just coming on a truck, set them Okay, the next option then, and this is kind of on the house, so to speak. We've been talking about doing stuff like this for years, and an option that we've always, the issues that we always had is what it costs to build a ramp because of deep foundations. And so an idea of trying to get almost double of what you would have now, not quite, obviously, but this is a parking deck. So if you would envision, and you'll see this in a section, so we gain, 60 some stalls there, and so we go half in the ground and we go half out of the ground. So it's not so tall, and we get our covered parking in the lower part, and we get, then back on top we get the other parking. So you got to take out staircases and stuff, and that's why you end up, you don't get to double the square footage. It takes about the same square footage, actually just a little more because of ramps and stuff. Next slide. So the idea here is the same thing. We have an entrance on the west, on the left side, which now you're going to ramp up to the top floor, and then you go. If you would park there, if you took the option for the underground parking, you'd come back down on the other side and make a 180-degree turn and go down into the lower side. You can see that. So it's roughly about a 10-foot, 5-inch floor-to-floor height. And so we basically split the difference. I mean, you go up roughly 5 feet up to the first floor and 5 feet down to the lower level. So the lower level would be the enclosed part, which would be even more enclosed because there would be, not even a door on the west side. And then you'd have two ramps on the other side to be able to, or I should say, a ramp going down, a ramp going up on the east side. So the one that says down is going down into the lower level, and the one that says up. So it's basically the same floor plan, same parking arrangement on both floors. So you get 180 stalls, so you net 60 some stalls. So you gain some stalls. And the next slide. So that's just the lower level again, or that's upper level actually. Yeah. So it's the same exact configuration up and down. So that's kind of nice from that specific one. So that's kind of what it would look like, and we'd probably do things like, we would use a decorative precast on the outside. We'd probably skip panels and put railings in so it was a little more area on the top. So it's not so a big wall, but actually it's not as high as the other option in terms of out of the ground. And you gain 60 some stalls. And the next slide. And that one's surprisingly enough not as much more as I thought it would be, about $1.3 million more than the first one. This roughly is just a little over almost $26,000 per stall. The problem with this scenario is the fact that we already had stalls there, so it's not like we're so if we went 4 or 5, 6 stories, then obviously we'd gain a whole lot more stalls, but it'd be a lot more expensive. So but you do gain 60 some stalls right next to there, right next to the terminal.
Next to the door is what we're looking for. So it's I guess from the dollar perspective, it'd probably make more sense to do this one than just the covered one, but it's only $1.3 million more, so. Great. Thank you very much for that. Thank you very much for getting this together. So, because we've all looked at it for a long time and said, well, how much is it to do something like this? So now we actually have a target that we could look at. So.
And Derek's got that PowerPoint, so if you want to get a copy of it. Yes.
Okay. And that price is guaranteed for the next 10 years, correct? Just kidding.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
The third option being the parking ramp. what's the cost per space?
We didn't do an option for that, or all I was
Did we have-
instructed to do was a
did
cover.
Sioux Falls
We did a
just did
study.
one. Sioux
Did we do a
Falls,
study here though?
Yeah.
we did one
We did.
several years ago,
Yeah.
and it was $25,000 a square per space. And then Sioux Falls did almost the exact same ramp that we did just here this last year, and they were 35,000 a square foot
Yeah,
because the
that's-
price of materials has gone up significantly.
That's in the range of these.
A
Well-
little bit
Sioux
more.
Falls is 35,000. This was
35,000.
25,000 per square per stall.
26, yeah.
26.
Yeah, and it's just because, you know, they're doing a larger ramp like we were originally thinking, and so their soils are similar, not active, they're probably better than ours, but they're doing deep foundations and then, a much larger precast part of that environment, so, yeah, so for instance, the city's selling, you know, to Millbank, I think the
Island Park.
Downtown,
the
right?
parking
Island
ramp
Park.
downtown, and I think they're getting 25,000 a stall roughly. We're looking at adding on a floor, just one floor away, and we're thinking it's gonna be more like $38,000 a stall. And part of that is just because it's still right there, but, the big thing with that is all the foundation and stuff are there, so
Yeah.
it really is quite expensive.
So Brad McAllister from SV Plus is on, and we did a pro forma on a 500 gross and a 1,000 gross garage back in 2016. Brad and his team have been working on updating that pro forma. And just a couple of days ago, Baker Tilly, which used to be Springstead, which the city's used and we used for a bond, provided some new interest rates, some updated interest rates for that study. And now, Brad, if you have any updates on when that might be available, maybe at our next board meeting?
Yeah, for sure, Sean. I think we'll be able to wrap that up next week. But thank you for getting those interest rates for us. We're going to revisit it here this week, and we're going to get with you. And then, yeah, we can definitely give you some information to share with the MAA team in the next meeting.
And you're familiar with the Sioux Falls ramp. I mean, they're building because they're landlocked, but it's what, 36, 37 million, I believe. And that's without the walkway.
That's 37 million without the. They had a plan for a sort of skywalk between the parking garage and the terminal. So that's without that piece. So yeah, pretty expensive. And I think the per space cost is accurate that the gentleman shared earlier. About 35,000 per space.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I just did a quick calculation at $20 a day, because I think our last study was at $28 a day. $20 a day, 108 spaces. We'd have to be full 26 weeks of the year, and it would take 10 years to pay it off without the interest.
At $20 a day.
Yeah, at 20 a day. And the last calculation we did was 28 a day. And I think we figured out that there was only gonna be that we would need full occupancy for, I can't remember how many years, but according to all the three, now we're gonna get another year of research, people would probably use it 2 months out of the year and be willing to pay for that 28 a day. So I think it's a good discussion, though. I think this is really a kind of a balance, a good balance to look at.
I have a question for Terry and for Brad McAllister. Brad, when you do your numbers, can you also have an idea of what the maintenance cost on it is per year? Because that was always the thing that crushed everything. As soon as you did the numbers on it and figured out what you were going to have to pay to maintain this structure per year, and it was in the millions from what we were told from the last time, and it just destroys the financial piece after that. And you're like, wow, I can't make these numbers work anymore.
Yeah, we're definitely factoring that into the study. Yeah, but certainly, we have a garage in Lincoln Airport. We do, I think, an annual power washing once every other year, and then obviously there's some sweeping, frequency each year. But then you think about, the salting and cleaning during winter, making sure there's non-slip surface areas in the stairwells and that kind of thing. So certainly there there's a significant maintenance consideration.
Thank you.
And cameras too. I mean, when I was on city commission and we had a parking garage, cameras were really important to have the visual aid, because when you get a parking garage like that, as well as our elevator was out constantly. And I think that's where I like that too, because I mean, you wouldn't have an elevator.
Yeah.
But I think just the visual cameras, especially for, you know, if you've got somebody traveling alone, it's a good, it's just needed.
Okay.
So one of the people I had Brad and his team put on was Scott Fromming from Walker Consultants. And Scott is still helping you, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
we had a good discussion with him a couple of weeks ago.
Scott has been
You know,
involved.
obviously. Yeah, go ahead, Sean.
And Scott has been involved in all the city ramps, so that's their consultant. So their own person is helping with this here. And,
Perfect.
and I think you'll be surprised at what you see.
You keep in mind too that you know, when you have a garage, you make the decision whether to keep that top floor open or closed for parking. And if you keep it open, as Sioux Falls has decided to do, and allow for parking on that top level that's exposed, there's snow removal costs there as well.
Mr. Chairman, I think it would, 5, 6-year-olds, I think it'd be great to have an update. And again, just to be able to compare the various options on a cost per space. Some sort of market sensitivity, demand price situation. And again, because we have lots of available land, our first instinct is to just keep paving that and walking further and further or running shuttles. But there is extensive cost to continuing to pave land and stormwater disposal and amongst all the other things. So it's just something I think we need to look at and compare those options as we go forward.
Yes. For the record, I am not in favor of continuing to pave further and further and further away, because I know I'm going to be the guy on the very end of that parking spot that has to walk all the way here, and that doesn't sound good. Terry, do you? I was going to ask, do you know would there be any extensive maintenance other than little sweeping, snow removal, and pressure washing with the plan that you
The kind
proposed?
of system that we're using would be, I think what they would consider a higher maintenance upper deck. It would just be that upper deck, so it would probably be terrible. But the idea is, so you typically build a ramp with precast T planks typically, and you can do that with a topping or not a topping, or you can do like the ramp downtown that the city's selling is actually a post-tension ramp, so it's actually poured in place. There's less maintenance to those because there's no joints. So if you think about a precast plank, it's probably got a 3/4 inch to 1 inch joint in between each one of those that has to be caulked and maintained. And of course, as soon as they start leaking, you know, stuff that's falling off the bottom of your car is landing on the top of somebody else's car, and usually not friendly to the paint finish. So you have to maintain that. And right now, that's kind of what we've done is the least expensive option is the precast garage. You see those all over. I mean, you know, Minneapolis Airport is pretty much that's what that is. But post-tension ones, they're going away from it a little bit just from the cost perspective, and then just technology is difficult to get. There are very few people that are capable of building stuff like that. So, so it wouldn't. I don't think it'd be horrible because it's only one.
Okay. Is there any economies of scale if you were to do the east and the west side of the short-term parking lot? Would that have any
You know, there's
appreciable
always
difference?
economies in scale in terms of especially doubling the size of it. What that would be, I don't know. I think we have to really get into it to just kind of iron that one out.
That's fine. Thank you. I just wanted to throw that
Mr.
question.
Chair?
Yes.
I guess one thing to keep in mind is we're not adding 180 spots on one side. We're only adding 90. And so when you do the calculation, to be fair, we're dividing it by the whole 180. We shouldn't be. We actually should be
No,
dividing it by
that's
the
exactly
additional
right.
spaces.
That's right.
And when you do that, it becomes very confiscatory, and I would be concerned that we don't look at that.
Yeah,
Very
you're
concerned.
only really dividing it by 64 all.
What do we
Yep.
have to do? Yeah.
Good discussion.
But you do gain 64.
That's true.
That's true.
That's
Right
right.
next to it.
Right.
Any other comments? Any other questions?
I do have one. The conversation we're having about this, along with the Skyway, there are really multiple conversations that should all be had together, each individually, and then bring them together in a master plan as this has been done for now over a number of decades. But it is important now. And I don't think we should discount it, and I don't think we should skip a meeting without talking about it.
Okay. And what did we have our Skyway at, about 25 million before inflation? Before COVID happened, it was about 25 million for the Skyway
I can't
to connect a parking ramp to the
Oh,
terminal.
yeah, that's right.
It was phase one of
Phase
the
one,
parking
right.
ramp was to get the people from the ramp to the terminal,
Right.
keeping them inside. And I think we had come up with about 25 million, and
Yeah.
that was before the cost of materials went up.
Mhm.
So anyway, good conversation. One more,
Yeah, Jeff, so.
Jeff.
All right. I had sent out this exhibit yesterday. So at the request of the authority, I put this sketch together just to reflect moving the exit plaza to the south end of the parking lot. And so what we had done was we had put the exit plaza just kind of inside of the parking lot here, and then created a single lane exit point, so you didn't have two cars coming out, and one wants to turn one right, one wants to turn left. It's just a single exit lane, and then also there'd be a separate exit entrance for snow removal. So, and what that would do would free up space closer to terminal where the existing exit plazas are, to pave and create parking there. So as you can see, there's just that purple area, there's about a gain of 147 spaces. And then I also added extra parking along the west edge of the long-term lot, roughly 38 spaces. And then where the new exit plaza would be, we just estimated roughly 62 spaces that would be lost. Could be more depending upon, if any additional spaces needed to be removed just to make snow removal more efficient. So when it's all said and done, it's roughly, 125 stall net gain. Again, could be a little less. So, and then I had put together just a high level estimate, and it's probably, again, construction prices are so high right now, but I was estimating around $650,000-$700,000 for this. So
For the move?
just for like the civil site utilities, the booth would be extra. I think
Extra,
Terry had
right.
estimated $1 million, something like that.
Yeah.
So to do that, we just need to make a decision, whether it goes
So.
in the existing location or it's all moved to the south. So
Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, I guess one advantage is the new site could be built while using the existing.
Yes, and then you don't have any lost time. You quit using the one on Tuesday and you start using the other one on Wednesday when you build them in different places. I like that idea. I like the idea of having 147 spaces closer to the door.
Yeah.
That is important to me. And that was my thoughts on it.
Mr. Chair, the only concern is, once you get on that road, there's an issue of how traffic flows on that frontage road there.
correct.
Yes. But I learned when I was 16 that you yield to people and you're not a jerk and things work out okay. So when I was learning how to drive, I don't want to be snippant about it, but I mean, we're making a big to-do about something that's pretty common that we all know how to do is yield and give way. So
And I could just see the signage, terminal to the left, to the right, exit.
Exit, yeah.
Just some simple signage at the very end.
I think that would be very easy to accommodate. So, Mr. Cosgrove?
Yeah,
do you
this
have any
is
questions?
Brad McAllister.
Yes, sir.
SB Plus. Just a couple thoughts on this. Looked over the drawing that Jeff developed, and I like gaining the spaces. The biggest benefit, I think, for our customers is a direct line of sight to the exit plaza from the short term and the crossover into long term. I do like that. If we do decide to bring back a seasonal shuttle in the future, I think that ride for customers, the return to the terminal on that shuttle becomes shorter and quicker as well. I wonder too, from a cost-benefit analysis, if this space gain by moving the exit plaza does push off maybe the development of the East Economy lot as well. And I do like certainly gaining spaces in long term with our new reservation system and dynamic pricing. Certainly we're trying to capture those customers who would stay longer, who we know through our transportation studies and our surveys that those folks are the primary folks who get dropped off at the terminal and who do not pay for parking and take advantage of our parking facilities. Let me think. There was yeah, and I think that's about it. I mean, from a con standpoint, it's cost. But I think, we do a cost-benefit analysis on the development of that East Economy lot and the gaining of these spaces. I will say, the continued seamless operations with the old exit plaza, while the new plaza is built, is nice as well. Although, we're very used to also changing out that parts equipment and at exit plazas while they're in place as well. So that's not a real big deal, I think, for us from that standpoint. We can really swap out those machines, several in the same day. So the transition's not that bad, but it is a nice benefit if we're able to construct that at another location and continue operating out of the old plaza.
Thank you, sir.
Those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, so this is just receiving information at this time. We're not making a motion at this time.
It's up to you, but you can just
I would love to
receive it.
make a decision right now. I would love to make a
If you have
decision.
your thoughts on what you want to see, kind of a master plan of this versus that and everything else, I think there's a lot of coordination that needs to go on here. And as Brad said, the cost benefit now with this information versus the East Economy lot, does that get put on the shelf? The parking minds will have to get together and with Jeff and Terry and figure that out.
And I think what Rick said, to look at it in all encompassing, but then also what John said, I know we're getting updated research on, we do it every year with the percentage of people dropped off versus Uber, and I know they're gonna be doing that real soon. So we'll be able to see 4 years of trends and be able to see what are those consumers doing, so.
In fact, Brad, the study you did in July should be available by our next meeting? Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Sean.
All right, okay.
Just one last quick comment now that I'm thinking about it is, one maybe drawback to having in this location is the crossover road is two-way traffic, and I could potentially see someone, coming north on Dakota Drive, seeing a large exit plaza and maybe thinking it's the entrance to the parking lot, and then they try to get in and realize that, the entrance is in a different location. So it would have to be signed appropriately. So,
Okay.
and then direct people back to the appropriate entrance point. So.
Chair?
Yes.
With respect to snow removal, if we have a major snow event, the way it is right now, it is kind of broken up. How would snow removal be affected by having the exit on this end? Have you talked about that at all?
Are we trucking snow out? Are we gonna
Yes.
load it up in a truck and move it
I
out?
believe that's done now.
Yeah,
So.
it is. I mean, going south right now, right straight out the end is very convenient for them, is that's where they put their big pile. Going south now, moving it over to the west. I guess, yeah, that's what the equipment is for, I guess, to move it, but
Right.
not as convenient as it is right now.
I
And
believe it.
there's nothing to be said that you couldn't have, multiple snow removal exit points along that road too. So.
It's possible.
I think the Google Earth picture that I looked at last night as a big snow pile right here.
They put it in the corners,
In
they
the
put it in the
corners.
center, wherever, in the short-term lot, it gets, wherever they have places, but they do spend a lot of, well, we spend a lot of money moving snow now since we took over that responsibility.
Does anyone want to make a motion to approve the south terminal, moving the terminal, exit terminal to the south? Anybody want to make a motion for that?
Mr. Chair, I think we have a number of moving pieces and should gather a bunch more information
Roger that.
before we spend those dollars.
Okay. Okay, we will postpone a decision until next time. All right, any other items up to talk
Just
about?
a couple of things. So the staff from Pro Resources here, thanks for being here. The employees are in the process this week of signing the release form from the city, so data can be released to Pro Resources. I hope we have all of those by Friday, if not early next week. It's a form, I think you've all seen the draft form that they've put together. Stacy and Eric Johnson worked on that. So that should be going forward. Any concerns that you have, Paul, Ashley, and Chris? There's a lot of moving pieces as we get closer to December 27th, I guess, the first payroll, so that's being taken care of. Working with Nancy Morris, Stacy's in the loop on an amendment to the memorandum of understanding that we have with the Fargo Police Department for providing the Homeland Security TSA required officer here at the airport. It's just tweaking some language, but in my response to Nancy yesterday, they talk about the annual cost of the officers assigned to the airport, but the understanding has always been, and the requirement is that we can only pay for the actual cost. So if there's a federal IG audit, they go to an officer and say, well, gee, today you spent 8 hours on duty, where were you at? Well, I was 4 hours out on the street or 4 hours at the checkpoint. Well, we can't pay for them for the hours out on the street. So she's working through that with the chief and one of the sergeants and Stacy and I don't see any issues with that. It's worked out well. We want the city to be paid 100% of what their actual cost is to provide that. And that's been our commitment since we did that back in 2017. I will circulate to you a letter that Ryan Reisinger, the airport director in Grand Forks, sent. He's the president of the Airport Association of North Dakota. As you're aware, there is a legislative meeting coming up on the utilizing the American Rescue Plan Act funding that the state of North Dakota has, and the airports are asking that at least $20 million be provided to airports into what was a bucket they called in the prairie dog thing, if you remember the prairie dog. The airport bucket never got filled, and they're working on it. So we're requesting that they consider $20 million of their ARPA funds be assigned to that prairie dog bucket, and then the State Air and Ice Commission will work with the airports on administering those grants. So I'll send the letter to you. I just got it thanks to Jordan. Jordan's the treasurer for the Airport Association, so I'll get that in your hands. Flash parking, we sent the first payment. You approved that today, so they will be sending the equipment to us, I believe, next week. Stored here on site in the new SRE building. And then Jeff has been working to obtain 3 quotes from electrical firms here in town that will have to come in and help provide the conduits and the fiber and all of that stuff that goes from all of the entrance and exit devices to connect with the mothership, I guess, to make all that system work. So we
When
do
will it
have,
kick off?
hope everything has to be completed by November 15th, correct?
Yeah.
Yep.
Is Flint putting something together for advertising and promotions?
They will be once
They will
we get closer and we make
Okay.
sure that everything's going to work, that there's new parks equipment.
Okay.
The underground infrastructure needs to be completed by, I think it's the 19th of November, but
Oh,
then
okay.
there's time that
Then there's
Flash
time after
needs to
that.
put
Okay.
actual equipment on.
Yeah, to put
Okay.
it in. So I'm hoping by December 1st, everything will be up and operational. Maybe it could possibly be sooner. I think that's it. As far as flights, there's a lot of some media calls last night and this morning about the Southwest Airlines deal. Of course, they're not operating here, but all of the airlines are being impacted by crew shortages. We've lost some of our Delta ops to Minneapolis because of the lack of flight crews for the regionals that provide service between Fargo and Minneapolis and other locations. So we've gone from 7 operations down to 5. United made an adjustment. I sent that out to you as well, as they struggle to find flight crews as well. They have plenty of aircraft. That's not the issue. It's finding flight crews. And as each of the employee groups goes through their COVID requirements and mandates, we don't know what's going to happen. It was reported that 30% of the American Airlines pilots aren't going to get vaccinated. So what's that do to an operation? You can read in the media all kinds of stuff on the reasons why Southwest canceled 1,300 flights Sunday, 1,000 some yesterday, and there's more in the works for today. So take it from there. But our operations are going to be impacted going forward because of a pilot shortage, whether it's COVID related or if it's just because the numbers aren't there because of COVID and the massive layoffs and retirements that took place after the COVID pandemic hit. So that's all I have for right now. If there's any other questions. Our mill levy, of course, was reinstated at the last commission meeting. I guess that ended on last Wednesday at 4, so we did get 3-2 support to continue the mill levy, which is good news. I think it's no secret here that our reserves are going to continue to increase over the next couple of years, due in part to blessing and the curse of the COVID months. So our operational expenses are being covered through either the CARES grant, the CARISA grant, or the ARPA grant that we will be getting. And that's for the next 3 years to 4 years, depending on when we accepted the grant. But concern about our reserves, yes, we have significant reserves, but as we've discussed here, it's for a purpose. The board here has had a long track record going back into the 80s and 90s of saving money for big projects. Well, the big project that's coming before us will be the terminal expansion project that we hope that the terminal area study that Mead and Hunt is working on will justify, if you will, a large expansion, maybe up to 3 to 4 gates from there. But you have to remember, a significant portion of that expansion will not be eligible for 1 penny of federal funds. The food and beverage areas, the offices, revenue producing airline space. There's a whole bunch of that won't be eligible. In a perfect world, AIP projects are 90% federal, 10% local. And the 10% local, hopefully, is half of it comes from the state. So 95 and 5. But terminal projects are not eligible for 90% federal funding. There's an effort underway right now to at least get them to 80%. But I think our experience, if we remember when we did the expansion in 2008, Terry, Jeff, it was maybe 70% was eligible. So the chances of the FAA having their full 70%, if that's what the number is, in federal funding is slim and none. The other thing that airports are fighting, and it's in the infrastructure discussions right now, if this infrastructure bill goes through, whatever version that may be out there, is small hub and non-hub airports are capped at $20 million in discretionary dollars right now. And there's debate amongst the FAA themselves, wondering is that a cap, lifetime cap, or if that's a per project cap. I don't know if we have an answer on that yet, Jeff.
We don't.
Some FAA officials say that it's a lifetime cap at $20 million. Well, when we did the original terminal and the expansion in 2008, we received a significant amount of discretionary dollars. So we may have already eaten up a whole bunch of our $20 million that we could be receiving. We're hoping to get the cap removed. There are funds in this infrastructure bill for terminal expansion, especially for small airports, non-hub and small hub airports. And hopefully we're positioning ourselves to get access to that. So the reason that we do and are continuing to accumulate some funds is for that very purpose, is to borrow less money, bond less money. If you don't agree with that, I guess that's a change in the mindset of previous board members, but that's what we're doing.
Mr. Chairman, I think we do need to have a very serious discussion about the mill levy. The commission sent a pretty strong message that they may not be inclined to support it going forward. And the discussion that we missed was, what are the other options to support the non-federal share other than a mill levy? And what are those things? And I think we need to have that discussion. And we have to look at our capital projects very carefully if we're going to ask for the mill levy to specifically tie it to those projects that we're looking for and why those numbers are needed. And just the fact that we don't like to use debt, or we like to put money away because we think that's the best way. When you look at some of the interest rates today, it may make more sense to look at debt, and especially if we're asking for taxpayer money. I know as a taxpayer, I would rather keep my capital and pay it out incrementally over time than to build up big reserves. And so that's kind of a philosophical aspect of it, but I don't think you can just dismiss bonding and debt as evil, that the better way is to save those funds and do it. I mean, there's arguments on both sides of it, but I really do think we need to have the serious discussion. What would this budget look like without the mill levy? And what would be the sources that we would have to have available if we want to match federal funds?
Sure. The fun thing is, and I do want to thank the mayor for his leadership and Commissioner Garrett for his leadership in this whole mill levy discussion. And he said, in last year's projects I closed out, Fargo received $24 million in federal funding, and our local share of that was $1.2 million. That came from the taxpayers, and so we got a $22 million influx from federal funds and state funds. And the mayor said, "Hey, I want the city of Fargo to continue to have the most competitive airport here. I want people to come here to fly out, and we can attract more service here, and that's what a mayor is supposed to do, is to try and find these great deals that are available and bring that money into the city. And it's hard for me to think of somebody running for mayor that think that would be a bad idea, and I don't want to continue to fund that. So anyway, I want to thank the mayor personally for his leadership on that. I want to thank Tony Garrett for his leadership on it. And I want to thank John Strand for reconsidering his position on it, which made the whole thing. But the fun thing is if we do bond for our next project, it goes to be a general obligation bond, and it has to go on the city of Fargo's debt, and then they have to assume that they have to basically co-sign for it for us as well, which goes on their debt rating. And then also they have to pay us a mill levy to pay off the debt, so and it just adds a whole lot more interest on it. And I just looked at the numbers, and for the 1,000 space parking ramp, it was about $1.2 million for just debt if we were to borrow, just to bond. Just the bonding fee was going to add over $1 million. And I was like, well, you're saving $1 million by putting the capital in your pocket and saving for it versus just bonding it. It costs another $1 million, and $1 million is a lot of money.
And Mr. Chairman, this is a philosophical discussion.
It is a philosophical
for
discussion.
another day, but
it is for a
the
different
fact
day.
is
But
that
you can't look at it and say this is the easy button. This is the only way to do it. It is a different model. Saving money is one model. It's kind of the Dave Ramsey money project. I'm going to put money in my pocket. I'm going to pay for it as much as I can, or I'm going to put it on a credit card, and I'm going to go into debt and pay a lot of interest in the meantime.
Well, the philosophical difference there is that it's not your money, it's the taxpayer's money.
Correct.
And we're taking taxpayer money and putting it in a savings account. And some would argue it's better to leave the money with the taxpayers and withdraw incrementally to pay the cost of the public.
Sure. When you look at the camera on me for a second, when you look at the mill levies for the city of Fargo, 288 mills go to the city of Fargo, complete from the taxpayers. 100-ish, or I'm sorry, 50 go to
I
the
think
city.
City of Fargo is about 55.
50, I think it was 51,
Yeah.
go to the city. 51 go to the park. 2 go to the airport, and then the school board gets the rest. So when you look at removing the 2 mill levies from the airport, it takes a $4,000 property tax. You save about $27 a year, and you're cutting off tens of millions of dollars in federal funds that you're leveraging.
And Mr. Chairman, like I said, this is philosophical, but you get to 221 mills, 1 mill at a time.
288.
But you get there 1 mill at a time.
Sure.
And so each mill does have significance. And again, for taxpayers, it's so simple to say the mill levy is only going to cost each taxpayer $10 a month in their home, or $20. It's still taxpayer money, and I think we still need to be very, very hawkish on making sure that we can keep our tax rates. Because everything else that you talk about, as you talk about with Mr. Engen, is the overall picture is the fact that we've got a great airport, but the highest mill levy amongst competing cities can also be detrimental. So it all fits together. It's a discussion, like I said, we probably should have had immediately after the first vote is that what are our options? We simply can't say, without the mill levy, we won't get matching federal dollars. Without the mill levy, we'll have to find other matching dollars. And what are the sources of those dollars? And how does that look overall? Is it a better option to take the mill, is the mill levy more efficient or whatever? But we didn't have that discussion about how else we would go ahead with that. The reserve's an easy target. Government entities with big reserves and savings accounts will always be attacked to give up their tax base until they bring that reserve back to a reasonable number. If we want to maintain that, that's got to be a study that we show that it's more efficient to do it that way. But again, you're going to have a hard time taking money out of my pocket and hanging on to it in the form of a tax when I would rather pay incrementally as we go. That's a personal opinion. If that prevails across the community, we need to be careful and aware of it.
So just a point of clarification, the mill levy money is not being held on to, I guess, if you will. The mill levy money goes into the 563 construction improvement accounts. Right now, that balance is between First International Bank and our sweep account at Wells Fargo, maybe around $2 million or just slightly less because we have, that's the fund where the mill levy money goes. The operations and maintenance account, which is parking, car rental, percentage of gross revenue agreements, not one penny of mill levy money goes into there, is around 26 or 27 million. That is where the surplus is. And then we have a $7 million parking lot construction and maintenance fund. So the mill levy is not being bankrolled, that's being spent. In fact, it's spent right away in the car
Mr.
and so
Chairman,
forth.
and
But it is all
Sean,
taxpayer
I
dollars.
appreciate how you'll parse out all of that.
But that's how the accountants do it. So.
Green dollars are green dollars.
Correct.
That's not how government works though, right? There's operations and maintenance, and then
Hang on,
there's capital
hang on.
improvement, and they're two different pots, and you're like, hey,
Right.
these pots are huge. And you remember why we got so much money in CARES money is because we had
We had
high
no debt.
reserves and no debt.
Yep.
The bank airports, the way the FAA works, and that's our federal oversight, that's our Federal Economic Oversight Committee. Hold on, let me finish. The reason why we got there is bank airports that had huge amounts of debt got nothing, or very, very small, and airports that didn't have debt
Mr. Chairman,
and had
I
huge,
gotta
got a
challenge
lot
you.
of CARES
We
money.
didn't plan for CARES dollars.
We did not,
We
but it
fell
works out
into
that way.
CARES dollars.
We
But
did,
it's
but
because
that's how
we've
the
been
FAA
frugal.
works.
But again, this goes back to the discussion of we can parse it out and say different ways. If we didn't take the mill levy, if we took operating dollars, is that eligible for match? And could that have been? So the money's all fungible. And sure, there's restrictions on it, but at the end of the day, when you go to the taxpayer and put your hand into the taxpayer's pocket and pull money out of it, you have to be really, really, really careful that you're doing it in the most efficient, effective manner. And that's, I think, a lot of the problems as we went through this is the understanding of that. This is a taxpayer-owned and operated entity. And if we're going to ask...
No, it's not operated.
Taxpayers operate it.
No, if you're using our services and you're a renter, we operate it as separate. We don't use the mill to operate it.
No, the taxpayers own and operate this area. It's a taxpayer asset. It's not our asset. If we're saying we have some secret source of money and we operate it separately of the taxpayers.
Have you looked at
that's
our
not
budget
true.
lately?
Yes.
Okay, am I wrong? Isn't all our operation expenses are because of rent, because of leasing, because of passenger fees? It's not taxpayer unless you're using the facilities. Is that correct?
We get partial of, we do collect tax money in our mills, and so
Yes,
it's correct
but
that
for capital.
tax money does fund the airport partially.
Partially,
It is not
correct.
fully taxed. or
I think
not
what
by
you're saying is
taxpayer
smart, and I hope you go to the park board and do exactly the same thing. Because I think the park board, the school board, I really do like your philosophy, and I think we are one small segment. And I do challenge you, go to the park board, send them this meeting, because if you really want to make a huge impact, then let's do that.
We make a huge impact at the boards that you serve on.
You do. But also the taxpayers need to know what a
Yep.
fantastic deal they are getting
Yep.
for the small amount of money that comes.
And again, I'm not arguing against that. What I'm saying is
We
that
do have to finish and go on to our
we should wrap it up,
ceremony
but
here.
we should have the discussion in the absence of a mill levy. How are we gonna fund these projects? And I believe there's a variety of ways to do it. And when you look at it, you cannot silo those dollars completely. If operations is an eligible match and there is no mill levy, then maybe we have to find ways to become more cash flow positive from operations. Whatever those sources are, that's the discussion that's going to be made. And I'm sorry, I will never back down. This is taxpayer owned, taxpayer operated. And if you own the asset, you operate the asset. We don't own the airport. If it's not taxpayer operated, are we saying we're the entity that runs this? We serve at the will of the people. We serve at the will of the elected city commission, and the commission appoints us. We're serving the taxpayers, not ourselves or anybody else.
Agreed. Any other discussion? Okay. Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I think it's great we have these conversations with the reserve. Had we not had a reserve and went through COVID, John, the concerns of the city, the concerns of the county, the flying public would be a whole lot different if we were an airport in disarray, but we're not. And I think we have to take that into consideration in our conversations going forward. We can discount everything that happens and pick it apart, but we are not an airport in disarray. We came through COVID very strong, and we have to remember that first.
Our
I don't
accumulation of
disagree.
reserves has been
I
from
don't
all of your
disagree.
predecessors,
Excuse me, Sean.
so
I
if
don't
you want to
disagree.
change, if you want to
Sean,
change how we
excuse me.
operate, please do
Sean,
so.
Excuse me.
I got a 9:30, I gotta be out for the chamber, so I'm sorry, I have to go.
Rick, the only thing I would argue with you is we're supposed to be a well-run, efficient operation.
We
So is
are.
the city.
We all just came
Yeah.
through COVID, and we came through it very well.
Yes,
And I think we should take
I
that into
don't-
consideration, all our conversations.
I don't disagree.
Okay, we are gonna cease this discussion right now. We have to go over to the snow removal equipment for the rest of the ceremony and the grand opening today. I invite you all over there. Thank you for the discussion, and meeting is adjourned. Thank you.